Welcome to Anglo Irish Astro Geeks. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Susan McKeon. My co-hosts are...
Hi, I'm Anne Dunn from Astronomy Ireland.
And I'm Neil Norman.
And our special guest tonight is John McKeon.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, John. We should be really giving a shout out to Nick there, who's nursing a sore jaw at the moment, and he can't talk to us tonight.
No, he was in the boxing match. He was in the boxing match with a budgie. The budgie took him out in the first 15 seconds. He's doing okay for our listeners who are worried about him, especially in the Middle East. Is it the Middle East or is it Asia we're big? We're big in Asia, aren't we? Are we big in Asia?
Mm.
Yeah. Big shout out to our race supporters. Nick will be back next month. He's having his stitches out on the 21st of April. He's good. He's drinking plenty of Lucasade and chicken soup and stuff, I think. He's gonna moan about me now and put loads of rude words on the internet, isn't he?
The internet about you. If you want to go ahead there, on with your...
Yeah, I didn't do too much this month as what's to see in the sky because, well, the planets are a bit quiet again still. Maybe a few morning time objects, but I didn't bother with them really. So basically, on April the 20th, which is hopefully we'll be in time for that, there'll be the first quarter moon will be close to the Beehive cluster, so that might look nice. Maybe get nice photographs of that. And then the other thing to look forward to on April the 26th is the supermoon. And it, the way there's a big thing in the media always about it because it does look a bit bigger than normal. It is a bit closer, but it's not majorly big. But when it's coming up, it does look big. So you can, knowing our luck, it could be cloudy on the night. So start looking the night before and you can look the night after because for the whole 3 days, it looks pretty big. And this one is called the pink moon because of all the cherry blossoms and all that are on Earth at the same time as this full moon. And I didn't really bother going into anything else. There's nothing much that, unless you're going into the deep sky objects, which of course we mentioned last time. So that's it really, yeah. Neil, do you want to talk about that new nova?
Yes, there's a new nova in Cassiopeia that was discovered on March the 18th. And I actually observed it myself. It was magnitude around about 7.8 when I saw it. But it was discovered by Yuji Nakamura from Japan. And he discovered it at magnitude 9.6 in 4 images he took with a 135 millimeter lens. There was nothing visible down to magnitude 13 in the location where he looked some days beforehand. So it's just to the west of Cassiopeia. It's risen to magnitude 8 by the 20th of March, which was bright enough to be seen in 50 millimeter binoculars. So I saw it myself, as I say. So that's gone up quite a lot. And apparently it's actually staying roughly at the magnitude. It's not gone down an awful lot, I believe. So, which is quite unusual for novas. One of the last novas, I don't know, there was one in Delphinus around about, I think it was 2013, something like that, 2011. And I remember seeing that one. That was actually pink. That got to naked eye visibility. I don't know if either of you two saw that one back then.
Wow. No, I didn't see that. No,
we certainly didn't. Did you see anything like that, John?
I do recall a supernova, one of the two northern galaxies, M20 or M24. I could be wrong. But I think that was around 2013 or 14. I don't remember seeing it with the naked eye, but I do remember looking through the telescope and seeing it all right. Yeah.
Cool.
Fabulous.
It's beautifully placed in Cassiopeia, just to the west of it, as we say. I mean, I'm looking out there now, actually, and we have a clear sky in Suffolk for once. We've been underneath cloud for the past, 10 weeks or something like that. But yeah, if anybody wants to get out there now, I'm sure they've got a few more nights to get their modest equipment, binoculars out there or telescopes. There's plenty. I think Nick will be putting up maps later on in the show notes so people can locate it and spot it for themselves before it fades away, and do some people can do some astrometry with it and sort of like, do light curves. I'm sure that'll be on certain sites as well that Nick will hunt out for us. So yes, these things are exciting.
There's a site called aavso.org, and you look under pick a star and you enter Nova Cas 2021, which is the nova, and you can plot a light curve and you can follow it that way.
That's a great site as well.
Is it? Yeah, I wasn't familiar with it. It was David Moore suggested it.
Yeah, I actually use that quite a lot for variable stars, and you can get all the latest observations. People put in, all the latest observations into there, and you can follow variable stars as they're peaking or going down. So yeah, it's a great site.
It'll tell you the exact brightness and everything.
Yeah, as soon as people submit their observations, it all gets put in, and you can see for yourself, and you can see how other people see it from other parts of the world. So it's all great information.
That's really good. And of course, a supernova is made up from two like binary stars. One is a dwarf, and the other is a star maybe like our sun or a red dwarf. And the small a red giant, and the dwarf is pulling in material off the big star, and eventually it forms a disk, and then when it pulls the star, it starts with hydrogen that it's taking, and by the time it gets in to the dwarf's gravity, the dust heats up to about 10 million Kelvin, and that starts up. Oh my God, sorry, that was me. Sorry. I don't know what happened there. But so that starts up a nuclear fusion and a big explosion, which is what obviously we're seeing. Most of the material is blasted out in the shell. And so as Neil was saying, it was a Japanese chap who spotted it. So the National Astronomical Observatory of Japan they measured it, and it's moving at 1,600 kilometers a second, which is 3.6 million miles an hour. And according to Sky and Telescope magazine, if you could travel that fast in a rocket, you'd be in the moon in 4 minutes.
Blimey.
Yeah. Also, you can see it. It's a circumpolar. You can see it all night, but it's best in the evenings and the mornings. Isn't that right? You'd be better at that now.
Yeah.
And of course, John would. Are you watching it, John?
I haven't actually laid eyes on it yet. No, I haven't. Just the statistics alone, though, are just really just amazing. You just need to hear those figures about how fast it expands, and it's just and how the scale of the stars involved, and that's just enough for the imagination,
isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Stunning.
Do we know how far away it is by any chance? Because that's one thing I hadn't found out. Any estimates?
No, I didn't look up either. I was more interested in the kilometers per second, which I was fascinated with, which, as John said, completely mind-boggling. We can't get our brains around that kind of speed.
Yeah.
We're going to have to if we want to get anywhere out of the solar system. So
yeah, absolutely.
If we want to get anywhere at all with with some of us left at some stage, if we go somewhere, we need to be going fast, pretty fast.
Yeah.
Faster than we can imagine. 11,000 light years away is what Nick just put up. So 11,000 light years away.
11,000. Oh, wow.
And the visibility is so amazing on it. It's fascinating. I mean, you'd need some pair of sunglasses if you're anywhere closer.
And suntan lotion. Yeah, sure.
Yes. Factor 1 million.
At least, yeah.
Yeah. we might have to work on the factor 1 million a bit as well.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's about it for that one, isn't it?
Yeah. So John, you made this amazing discovery in 2016 on March 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day, of the explosion on Jupiter. So we'd love to all hear it from start to finish.
We have to. We must.
It's just gone 5 years. It seems like no time at all. I don't know what it is about astronomy, but anything you've done in astronomy doesn't seem that long ago. Yeah, it was a complete coincidence, just a complete chance. I suppose that's the only way you can spot an impact on any planet. So actually, I was the co-discoverer. The first real discoverer was a guy in Austria. His name is Gerrit Kernbauer, and he was imaging Jupiter on the same night I was. And he noticed a blip, that something looked unusual in the image. Possibly it was an impact, but it was kind of difficult to say for sure. The telescope wasn't quite big enough. Is this possibly an artifact on the camera, or is it a real event? It was not quite easy to make that out. And actually, it was 10 days after the impact, and 10 days after I had been out that night, that this went up on Facebook. Actually, it came through the grapevine of the astronomy friends, And I said, hold on a minute, I was out that night, I think. Let me go back over my data that I still have. I was making a time lapse of Jupiter from that night because it was a double moon transit. And it looked like it might be clearing up on St. Patrick's Day, the national holiday. So I got up, stayed up nice and late that morning, St. Patrick's morning. So I think I took 200 more than 200 mini movies of Jupiter to make a time lapse. And the very second last one, I think 45 seconds in, there it was. It didn't even last for 2 seconds. You could see it on the limb of the planet. So that completely confirmed, the exact same timestamp that the other guy had, and that was it. So I immediately, chopped up the video and tried to send it to as many people who wanted it. So I was contacted immediately by people who study impact. Can you take a look at the video? I was like, absolutely, please. Here's the video, share it on, give it to anybody who wants to do more study on it. I think they confirmed that the impactor was in the range of 10 to 20 meters. So even something that small, is visible when it impacts on Jupiter, Yeah. So it was lucky that I still had the data, and lucky that two of us saw it, because that confirms more than any one observer, Yeah, so that's about the size of it.
But that's incredible that it was only 20 meters and you could see it that far away on Jupiter. Like, isn't it?
It is incredible, yeah. Everybody assumed, and I assumed as well, that it would be a much larger object to be visible from here. But I did talk to the guys in the know on this who really study it deeply, and they just explained that the gravitational forces in Jupiter are so much greater than Earth that even a small object like that, when it impacts deep enough into the cloud tops, it would just completely vaporize the speed it's going, and the energy release is unbelievable in comparison to what it would be in Earth's atmosphere,
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody saw it's going back a bit now, the 94 Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 impacts. I didn't actually see them. I know they were visible to backyard people, but they lasted for months, didn't they?
That's right, yeah. They were much larger scale, yeah. And I do remember, I think it was one of the first kind of things I really remember, a noteworthy astronomical event. And I just remember the news channels playing it over and over, and you're right, the impacts really lasted months and months. Actually, the stars on the planet were still visible, They really were giant impacts, yeah. The impact that I observed was not quite large enough to leave a discernible scar. There may have been one, but nothing that was visible from a backyard telescope anyway.
Yeah.
So Jupiter didn't even notice, just went on about its business.
Yeah, it's a great video. It's actually, I saw it on YouTube.
I put that together as quickly as I could to get it up on YouTube, just to try and confirm the other discovery, So
yeah,
it was quite interesting, very interesting, and actually it happened more commonly than you might believe. The observations of impacts on Jupiter. There's been, I think, 2 since 2016, and all of them in the last, I think 10 years have all been by pretty much back garden astronomers, so I think a lot of people, the general public, I think, they think NASA or some sort of huge agency always discovers these things, and it's not the case anymore. Supernovas and impacts on planets are discovered by amateurs,
Yeah.
The equipment now is phenomenal,
Yeah, exactly. Professionals don't even bother doing that sort of thing now. If you follow Hubble Space Telescope on Twitter, for example, you see them looking at random stars or interstellar comets and things like that. They don't tend to do a lot of planetary work now. It's all through probes normally. The real science, the scientists, data collect what the probes find, and the backyard astronomer can find so much.
It's absolutely true, yeah. And if you're a beginner, you probably don't think, I don't think I could ever contribute or find anything. But it is actually the case. When I started planetary astronomy, it was only in 2012, I think, it never crossed my mind that I might actually witness something, that's an actual event, Something I didn't know as well at the time, that there is actually software there to help you detect these things. There is actually impact detection software. And had I been running that, I would have spotted it immediately. So I sort of educated myself quickly after the fact. But, that is something I think that should be marketed to, beginner planetary astronomers or even lunar astronomers, or, because there is always a small chance of an impact even visible on the moon. We don't think it could happen, but it can, I ran my software through, or I ran my videos through the impact detector, and straight away there it was. You spot something out of place and says, this, because when you think about it, when you think about an impact, it lasts for such a short amount of time, unless it's truly a huge impact. This thing was over in less than 2 seconds. I didn't see it on the night. I didn't see it when I was processing my videos to make the time lapse, and then it just left the data sitting on my hard drive. I may have gone unnoticed, forever.
Mm.
Everybody start looking into their hard drives of anything they've seen then, John, I think should be the takeaway lesson. You don't know what you've missed. You don't know what you've missed at all.
That's true, yeah. So I did broadcast that out to everybody I knew who did planetary astronomy. I said, for all of your old data through this impact detection software, there's a few versions of it out there, and they're all free, just install it, run it through, and see is there anything, that you haven't seen. And actually, there's something, even if you don't find something, that itself is valuable data, because the guy who makes the impact detection software, you can send reports to him of every video you've processed, and what he can say is, well, I can say for definite there wasn't an impact at this time, so he's slowly building a data set to say this is when the impact happened and this is when the impact didn't happen, which itself is actually valuable data.
Yeah.
I see Nick has just sent a message that NASA has a lunar impact program run by Brian Kudnick.
Okay, yeah.
I presume that would be easy enough to find, and probably free to download as well for everybody.
The impact detection software I use, absolutely, it is. I don't have the information with me here. I know it's made by a French guy. He's an amateur astronomer, and he put it out there. But if you just Google impact detection software or planetary impact detection software, you'd find it pretty quickly, I think.
So, John, after you made this amazing discovery, like afterwards, how long was it before? Obviously, you said 10 days or so before you knew about the data, but how long was it before the world really realised?
Well, I think what happened was, once I had confirmed, I was the second person to confirm that this was definitely an impact. The original video from Austria did start to take on traction. So both videos actually went viral for a few days, which was nice to see when people start to comment and they start to take interest, and people who might be beginners would get into the hobby,
Mm.
So yeah, they did rack up a few million views each, and then you see the discussions in the comments, people asking what it is, what they're looking at, and then you get the skeptics as well. Oh, this is a fake video. You'll always get that kind of stuff.
Yes. It's a hot pixel.
Yeah, it's quite interesting seeing some of the people asking the questions. Is this really from a back garden? And is this really what you can see with an amateur telescope? And a lot of people don't realize how far it's come. If they see a clear photograph of a planet or even of the moon, they assume it was done with an observatory level, telescope, which isn't the need. You don't need that anymore.
No.
Damien Peach has just got a telescope in his garden. I mean, he's what he can do is incredible. It's like being in a spaceship beside the planet or a comet.
Yeah, I think he was an inspiration for a lot of people. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a few people at his sort of level. And when you see the photographs, anything they produce is better than what the best observatories could get in the 1970s or 80s, just because of the difficulty of photographing planets, because of atmospheric disturbance. But the techniques we have now with the webcams and backyard scopes, you can get really, really, incredible images, which is what brought me to it.
What size scope do you have, John?
The 11-inch STT, just one notch under the C14, and that's pretty much what I use now. So I started out with a smaller 8-inch STT, which is a great one to start with, and then upgraded, of course, aperture fever struck, to get more details. So
of course. Yeah.
And someday, hopefully, upgrade to the C14, which is really, really incredible instruments,
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. We had our Astronomy Ireland. We do a monthly talk, which used to be in Trinity College Dublin, but since COVID, we have it now on Zoom. So we had this brilliant talk from Dr. Martin Braddock from Sherwood Observatory, Mansfield and Sutton Astronomical Society in Nottinghamshire. Martin has he's a string of amazing degrees and PhDs to his name. He's just passionate about space. He gave a talk about how space can help develop drugs for us on Earth and for future manned missions, say to the moon and Mars. And he just covered so many things. But one thing, what I thought was really fascinating was I'm always hearing about all these experiments being done on the space station, and they send mice up, and you're kind of going, what the hell are they doing with it? So just like astronauts lose bone mass up in space, so do mice. So they have these drugs called bisphosphonates, and also another one called osteoprotegerin. I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation, but they've discovered that these drugs can prevent bone loss in mice. So obviously they can in astronauts too. But it's also useful down here on Earth for people with osteoporosis.
I was just going to say osteoporosis is so prevalent, especially in women. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Actually fascinating.
So
And the mice get a nice trip out as well.
but you don't sort of, you kind of sometimes wonder what exactly are they doing up there? Why are they testing stuff in low gravity or microgravity? But that's why, because things like that they can. And then there was another thing that I thought was amazing, which was extremophile organisms. One is a bacteria, and the other one is the little tardigrades or water bears. I really love them. They're really cute.
Fascinating.
They're tiny, but they're the tardigrades in particular, because they kind of look more like little creatures. The bacteria look a bit boring. And they can survive on the top of Everest, near volcanoes. They can survive years of drought. And they can also survive on the outside of the space station. And like come back to life again afterwards, So the bacteria can survive. The bacteria's name is Deinococcus, and it can survive something like 15,000 times the amount of radiation that would just kill us. And the tardigrades can withstand 5,000 times what we can. Okay, not as much, but it's still an awful lot.
It's an awful lot.
Yeah, but they've worked out some sort of, they have some sort of facility where their cells can repair the damage from radiation. So this could be useful now for astronauts, say, especially on a long journey like Mars, kind of a journey where they're facing cosmic radiation. And but it's also for cancer patients here on Earth being treated with radiotherapy. If they could figure out how they repair the cells, it could be useful. So there's a measurement for a measure of radiation. So we normally on Earth get 2.4 millisieverts. That's the name of them. So we only get 2.4. 100 is the level that could cause cancer, and astronauts get 200 of them. But a long-term mission into deep space would be like they get 600. So we really need something. So if they could find out how the tardigrades work, and we can genetically engineer, it sounds really like space age, but it is possible. It will be possible. For astronauts, it would actually help to repair the effect of radiation for the astronauts. It's just one of the things that they wouldn't have to deal with then going to Mars. And then the thing that I really was amazed about the tardigrades and the Deinococcus bacteria is they can survive much more radiation than we'd ever encounter on Earth. So why do they evolve to have this kind of protection for something that they're never going to need?
So it's not that they're aliens; it's just that they're aliens.
Could they? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, they're definitely aliens. I mean, it says it on the program. Ancient aliens, they're there.
Yeah, they could have come from an asteroid or a comet. I mean, why? Otherwise, why are they? Why are they prepared for all this radiation when they've never, they wouldn't have had to evolve here.
And up to 600 atmospheres they can survive. And they are born with the same amount of cells that they'll always have. Their cells just get larger. They don't get any more cells. I mean, they're like a little perfect little engine.
Yeah, they're kind of cute.
Adorable.
But anyway, so that was only he had loads of things, but I just thought those two were particularly interesting points from the talk, really good. Maybe we can get him on to talk to us someday.
Could you think they could survive on Jupiter, John?
You never know. I wouldn't be surprised by the sounds of all the things they can survive. They seem to be able to survive anything. Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing little things, yeah.
I find them amazingly fascinating and kind of mind-boggling in their own little way.
Like a lot of humans. I know a lot of humans like that as well.
Some of them have brains and some of them don't. I mean, it's fabulous. Some of them are born with the same
countries. Well, one used to run America, but we won't talk about
that. That was one of them orange ones, yeah.
And Phil's going to have to cut the bit when I say Elon Musk, isn't he? Oh, no, I just said it. Well, I don't know. Well, we're best of friends, really. We send each other Christmas cards.
Yes, it's a very fascinating man, though. I mean, for what he does, I think me and my brother John had a conversation where we think he's a time traveler. Isn't that right, John?
If you say so. I could well believe it. Yeah.
He's certainly something.
He is.
He's quite clever, isn't he? I mean,
He is.
And he's made a lot of money, and he's done well for himself. But the Starlinks are just, mind you, I must be fair, I actually don't notice them much now. I don't pay attention to them. I don't see them in the news, and I certainly don't look out for them. And I don't see people on Facebook that they've seen 20,000 Starlinks get shooting across the sky. Nobody seems to care anymore, do they?
I saw it was like a joke, but somebody took a photograph and they said, "Oh, look at these stars and constellations photobombing my picture of geostationary satellites." It was a joke, but yeah, they were big streaks across the picture of whatever constellation or whatever they were trying to photograph.
Yeah, we had a comet picture sent into Comet Watch the other day, and somebody just nabbed this little comet. I think it was like 7P Pons Vinek, which is not a very bright comet, but all was just thousands of streaks all across the image, which absolutely destroyed it. This is funny, it's just horrible. But there we go. I'm not going to say anymore because
is there going to be 42,000? I think there's only 20. It's only 20 now on there, Neil.
Yeah, and that's only him. There's other plans.
Yes,
that's right. There is more to come from other people.
Yeah,
to go along with the stuff that's already up there from 50, 60 years of space exploration and
spacecraft
communication.
Space junk and up there. There's 9,200 tons of it now. I mean, they literally are going to have to build a huge big dustbin, and that'll just be more rubbish to put rubbish in. Like, something has to be done about that. But I do constantly talk about it. But
you're a pet.
That's my pet peeve. tidy up after yourselves, at least some of it, or make it look a bit better.
Stop acting like teenagers.
Yes, like little old people that won't clean up their rooms, But he put this up. He put this up, so I'm putting that up, and you didn't say anything to him. I reckon that's what they say to each other.
That's it.
Yeah. The sky at it. Nobody cares what's up there, but everybody wants to put their stuff up. Eventually,
of course, there's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of stuff up there that we don't know about as well.
Oh God, yeah.
The Americans, Russians, etc., etc.
Oh God, all of them. Yeah, all spying on each other.
This was a number of years ago, but it was confirmed to be true. Some agency in the US came to NASA one day and offered them 2 satellites that were actually usable as telescopes. And NASA had no idea they existed. And apparently they had been used during the Cold War to look downwards. And now it's like, okay, we don't need these anymore. You guys can turn them around and use them. And they were basically, I think they were nearly half the diameter of the Hubble Space Telescope, in terms of ability. And they said, look, they're up there if you guys want them. And they said, that's absolutely no idea they existed, no idea when they went up, and finally at their end of life, and just handed them over, your problem now. It makes you think, who could launch something and get them up there without even NASA knowing, or certainly the current people who run NASA probably don't know about it. It was probably a hidden payload on one of the missions years ago and nobody was told about, It is
exactly.
The cargo going up with whatever else is going up, and sure, there's not anybody checking them at the entrance, is there? I mean,
you don't have to go through customs.
There's no customs. Yeah, there's nobody checking the weight of your bag. It's not as bad as Ryanair. They're not checking for the extra ounce or 2 you have. Although I'd say if they were checking and they were looking, maybe they could keep some of the crap from going up.
Yeah, but I think in that situation, I think money talks, and government superpowers, especially communist governments, if you don't do what they say, you get put in prison or killed. Then you kind of just build stuff and then send it up, and no questions are asked until,
it must be nice to be a government agency. Just put that up and that's that. And you don't care how much it costs. Up it goes.
I don't think we all thought about space debris in the early days. They just thought it's really big up there and we'll send something up, and they never thought about the consequences of when it, deorbits or just stays there, smashing into everything.
That's true. Yeah, I agree with that. I think they just didn't envisage, this could ever be a problem. Yeah.
It's the same with like burning fossil fuels. I mean, people, this is so handy. We can burn fossil fuels and get steam engines, and we can do so much and build up industry and infrastructure. And then, I don't know, 200 years later, the world is getting the highest levels of CO2 in the atmosphere, and in 50 years' time, it's going to be so many degrees, and the seas are going to rise by so much. They never talked about that in the 1800s, So it's another generation's problem.
We're creating our own future problems, but at the time when we're creating them, we're not aware. So I wouldn't blame back to the people from years ago, but the people nowadays, I'm like, well, we know now. stop making it worse.
Yeah.
Well, you were just saying earlier on, Neil, about Comet Shoemaker-Levy.
Yes.
And weren't you talking to the discoverers of them just recently?
And yes, we did. We spoke to, we did. A couple of weeks ago, we spoke to David Levy. I mean, he's actually on Comet Watch more times than I am. And Caroline Shoemaker was on there too. And yeah, she was recollecting it all to us because she was the first person to see the comet on the photographic plates. And she recalled, getting David in to come and have a look at this squashed comet as she put it on his plate. Yeah, and that they found. Which is a very interesting object. It was a Jupiter family comet, like a lot of the solar system ones are, with a short period of only a few years, and it got trapped by Jupiter's immense gravity, and it spent dozens of years in orbit doing various wild loops around the planet until it approached the planet's Roche limit, which is basically where it gets to. The gravity of the planet actually squashes it, and because comets are very loosely bound material, rocky, icy, so they can be destroyed quite easily by strong gravity. And it just broke to pieces, 20 odd pieces, I believe it was. They were all alphabetically, and they were seeing the impact the planet in 94. So, and she was saying how there was all the world descended upon them. They were the greatest comet discovery people of the sort of like 80s and 90s. She didn't actually get going until she was 50 years of age in the actual field of looking at astronomy. It was her husband Gene who got her into that, but he was actually a geologist by profession, studying impact craters. Then all of a sudden they were finding comets, and then they found this special one, and the whole of the world's media just descended upon them. It was a fascinating story. It's on Comet Watch. I believe that's on YouTube as well. I'm sure Nick will drop a little note in there somewhere.
Did that help to explain some craters on the moon as well? Kind of a series of craters on the moon. Am I mixing that up?
No, it did. As I say, I mean, Gene was into impact craters, like the Barringer crater, and this is when it wasn't regarded, and people didn't really know what caused them. I mean, I can remember watching An Old Sky at Night where the craters on the moon, Patrick Moore said they could be volcanic due to, just the ground just sinking because of volcanic flows underneath it and things like this. But yeah, they proved that because it made the comet actually impacted the atmosphere, and then you could see, black scar, black scar, black scar, black scar, and you could see like a train of them. And then they realized that there's trains of craters on moons of the other in the solar system. I think there's one on, I think it's Ganymede, although I'm sure Nick will put something up saying it's not in a minute.
Callisto, yeah, there's a chain on Callisto. Yeah.
Yes, and exactly. And there's also on the moon as well. So yeah, that's fragmenting comets and asteroids that are loosely bound, impacting one after the other. So yeah, it's all great science.
It's amazing how one thing leads to another.
Exactly, yeah. And we nearly had another comet, and I think it was 2013, which was going to crash into Mars. It just missed. That would have been interesting had it hit that, obviously. I think Comet Leonard is going to actually approach Venus down to quite close in December. It won't collide with it, but these comets are coming in, and they're showing how they can approach, smaller planets. I mean, Comet Leonard is a very long period comet. It's been, I think, about 70,000 years or something like that. And it's obviously been in this vicinity before. And as I was always told, they always go back to where they were like perturbed the last time they were here. So it's obviously been close to the planet Venus in the past. And just shows you there could be a comet with our name on it. We're talking about it as we're talking about, with John Jupiter. Comet Lexell in 1770 was sent our way by Jupiter. Jupiter can throw comets at us and asteroids, and we've had a very near miss in 1770. Had that comet have hit us, we wouldn't be here talking about it, I'm afraid. It would have been a dinosaur type event.
The point is made a lot of times how Jupiter actually protects us from objects, and it is true, it does hoover up a lot of objects and keep them around its orbit. But it also does have the chance to fire it inwards at us. That can happen, absolutely. There's nothing to stop it. I suppose on balance, the chances are far less. that it'll shoot something at us rather than protect us from something coming inwards. But you never know. It's a completely random,
Yeah.
And there was
Yeah,
an asteroid passed us by yesterday, was it? It was in the southern hemisphere, so we weren't going to see it, but apparently it would have been visible if you were looking between us and the moon. So it was like, close enough.
Close enough, yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing that is going to come our way dangerously close for a fair few whiles. Thankfully, Apophis now looks like it's going to be pretty good next time round as regards us and not hit us. It's going to pass between us and the moon and have its orbit change slightly, so that will push it a bit further away. But yeah, I mean, comets can come in. A lot of people don't realise that, I mean, for example, last year when we had Comet Neowise, it was discovered in mid-March, something like that. And by July, it was in the vicinity of the Earth. So if a comet had our name on it, we could possibly only have a couple of months' notice, literally. And comets, I mean, Comet Neowise turned out to be, they reckon now, about 5 kilometres in diameter. And that would be a dinosaur type event, because also it was on a retrograde orbit. So it actually hit us head on and faster than if it was going on a prograde orbit, the other way around. So, yeah, comets are dangerous things. A professor once said to me that comets are actually more dangerous than asteroids. People are looking at asteroids because, we're looking for the kilometre asteroids and the 1-2 kilometres. But a comet coming in on a retrograde orbit that's 5 kilometres in diameter is going to be far more dangerous, even though it's ice and rubble. The fact that the impact speed will be a lot greater on a retrograde orbit, like, Halley's Comet goes round. Well, Halley's Comet, not Halley's. Nick will tell me off for that later. Yeah, and Comet Neowise and things like that. And it's like the Comet K2's on a retrograde orbit. And so is Comet Leonard, I believe, as well. So, dangerous things.
I agree there. Yeah, I don't think enough attention is paid. I think it's one of those events of, well, it's never happened really, so we don't have to worry about it. But I suppose it only has to happen once, and then it's too late. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And the good thing is, the bad thing is that we can't do nothing about it. Had we even, if Neowise had our name on it last year, we would not be here. It's very simple.
They can only actually see these things when they decide to get lit up and they decide to be visible. On the way here, they're just dark objects and they cannot really be made out at all. So
no.
It's a difficult problem to solve, even if you were actively watching a lot of the sky.
Yeah.
It's just so easy to miss, It's just so difficult to find them anywhere far out.
Yeah, well, you say that. I mean, it's like this, the Comet K2, which is going to be at perihelion in 2022, was first detected in 2013. That's when we can, get pre-covery images where we can find it's a tiny little fuzzy pixel on a plate. Well, what you've got to remember is that comet was actually active at 23 astronomical units away, which is a record breaker. It's now about 14 magnitude now, and it's still about 7 astronomical units away from the sun.
Yes.
And the thing is, so we're looking at a very, very big nucleus, probably, because at the moment there's no water production because it's not close enough to the sun for that to sublimate. So the thing is huge. I mean, there was a picture put up yesterday, and it's got a huge coma and a tail already. And that's a comet we should be able to follow for about 30 years, which will be a record breaker. So this thing is probably as big as Hale-Bopp, which was estimated to be 50 kilometers in diameter, if we all remember that.
Oh, yes, I'll never forget that.
Yeah. Hale-Bopp was a record breaker in its own way. Yeah.
50 kilometers is amazing. I mean, that would pretty much wipe us out, I think, yeah. John, what you saw, the explosion on Jupiter, what did you say the size was there?
Oh, yeah, I remember some of the guys studied that, and they estimated about 12 megatons. So that would be like a hydrogen bomb.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is the interesting comparison, though, is the object that exploded over Chelyabinsk, I can never pronounce that properly, in Russia, wasn't much smaller. Okay,
exactly.
So it shows you the difference. It shows you the difference in the different objects that get hit. The different resulting. But you can imagine if that level of impact just appeared somewhere on Earth, out of nowhere, you can just imagine the devastation it could cause. It really just shows you. The Tunguska event is still under discussion, and somehow the world didn't really noticed at the time, and just by chance it happened to be in an extremely remote area of Siberia. But
Yes.
you can imagine if that was over London, or if that was anywhere basically in Western Europe.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
They're still trying to understand how big that actually was. They're still studying it to this day. You know.
I was looking at a picture of it earlier. I was at a lecture from by David Grennan about asteroids and supernovae and whatever. But he showed a picture of the Chelyabinsk part of what fell, and I'd say it was like about quarter the size of a washing machine. You know, that's how small it was, and look at the damage it did.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't take much more increase of mass for the effect to increase exponentially. That's the kind of way I understand it. Yeah. So you know, if you double the size of something, it's much more than double the impact.
So have you been finding anything else interesting like that since, John?
Well, no, I've just kept up the observing, and I haven't found any more impact now, unfortunately. But yeah, unfortunately, the weather is not great, and the planetary alignments certainly from Ireland are not favourable. For
very dreary at the moment.
Jupiter and Saturn are very low now on the horizon. So I did get the chance to go to Barbados in 2018 and 2019, and it's a great place because the skies are nice and clear and calm, and the planets are always at a pretty decent angle in the sky. So it's once you see a planet from those skies, you know, the UK and Ireland just don't compare anymore.
They just fade, yeah.
It ruined it for us, John.
We would still do some lunar observing from Ireland, you know. It's but just planetary wise, it's not great just at the moment. It will get better in the next few years, but you know, a year is a long time to wait. You know.
Yeah. Mars has gone very far away now. It's very, very dreary looking.
Yeah, that's right. We get it's only every 2 years from Mars, yeah. And of course, the last time in 2018 when we got the great opposition of Mars, there was a global dust storm. So it was just like an orange. You know, no matter how well you got it tuned in, it was basically like an orange ball. So, there was some data, or there was some details with infrared filters and things like that. So it was still kind of interesting. And still just interesting to see that nobody really understands or is able to sort of figure out the cycle of why these global dust storms just appear on Mars kind of suddenly. Mm-hmm. You still don't really get why they come at certain times, you know. So right up until that was happening, nobody really knew it was going to happen. And then it just took over the planet. We said, okay, every few years this seems to happen, but we still don't really get why. So it's still interesting to look at, you know.
Yeah. I remember we found out, we were talking about it last time, that they discovered that the zodiacal light is coming from Mars. That's when we see that, we knew it was cosmic dust, but we didn't know from where, and now we know it's from Mars. I think it was the Juno mission discovered that by accident.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it was doing one of its, you know, flybys to get a gravity assist. So it was back here and back out again, and then it realized that the dust stopped just outside of the orbit of Mars, and it ended on at Earth. So they figured out. Yeah, amazing.
I do remember attending before Juno was launched in 2016. I attended a talk from a German guy, and he was one of 3 people selected as the official people who will process the first images from Juno. And the reason there was only 3 people selected is because it was extremely difficult to process the images of Juno, and I think it still is to process, because the camera on the Juno probe was a last-minute addition. I don't think they originally were going to have a visual camera. And I think they thought for public outreach they better include one, you know. Because they're more interested in the other information that they can detect. It's not so much a visual mission. But to put the camera on, they actually have 3 cameras on the body of the probe, and it's red, green, and blue cameras, and they will take images as the probe spins. So what that means is you basically get a big stripe of the blue channel, and then a stripe of green, and then a stripe of red. And because of the speed it's moving at and the distance it is above the cloud tops, they'll be kind of out of alignment with each other by the time you want to go and process those images back. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, okay. Talk about a process that took a long time to get right, you know. Basically have to process each channel and then try and line them up and then try and derotate each channel so the cloud tops match up. I thought planetary processing was difficult. But yeah, very interesting. Just when we just assume these images that we get back from things like Juno and Cassini are just these magical images that just appear. But there's a lot of work goes into making the processing them. So what we see looks like what you would see when you were there, you know. So it's very interesting.
Absolutely.
Amazing science involved there.
Yeah.
I think it's also a good thing to let people know, especially people on the amateur side, that the wonderful stuff we see, especially on any website or in any book or in any magazine, is hours of work, and that's not exactly what you've seen with your telescope or anything else. It's a long time in the works, a long time, a lot of information, huge amount of programming. It's not just if you look out through your little telescope and you don't see that. That's completely normal.
Yeah.
Gosh, the first time I saw Saturn through a telescope, I was so disappointed. I was expecting to see, a Hubble picture.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then you start to realize, wow, it's so far away. That's actually amazing,
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's always the case.
And the same with comets too, actually, because a lot of the comets you see in the pictures there, they're blue, they're green, but you can't see that with the human eye. The human eye is not sensitive enough to pick up the colours. So when you see a comet through your binoculars, it will look just like a grey, fuzzy blob with a tail.
Yeah.
Unless you get something like Neowise last year when it looked like it was on fire, which was absolutely amazing to see with your own eyes. It looked like a blood red comet, but yeah, most of them just like grey little fuzzy blobs. They're not green at all with the naked eye.
But Neowise really was an exceptional view. Really.
Yes.
I remember walking out. It was the start of lockdown last year, but I remember walking up to a local football field, and it was one of those lovely nights. And we had a spectacular event of noctilucent clouds. I don't know if you've ever seen them.
Oh, at the same time.
Yeah,
yes.
And it's just incredible. And hanging right above the noctilucent clouds, there was this comet visible. Getting more and more visible as I got into the darker parts of the football pitch. My eyes adjusted, and it was just an incredible view. To see these things with the naked eye, it's just unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a real special having the two together, wasn't it? And it went on for a few nights, the noctilucent clouds.
They do. They have a kind of a season. Yeah, you're likely to get them sort of bunched together at a certain time, and so sometimes they're kind of mild views, but sometimes they get really spectacular. And they get these variations of colors, you get orange and green and like the purple, and then, added to that, the comet, it really makes for like a painting kind of scene,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, with the first show that we did of this, I was, it was just me, Nick, and Anne, and I think I was at my back door, and I actually looking at the noctilucent clouds. Now, for those who don't know, I live in Suffolk, which is, near London, basically. And we don't get them very high this far down in the sky. Normally, we get them just above the horizon or just a couple of degrees, and you really need a good. But these were like 23 degrees above the horizon. These were, I've never seen it like it before in this part of the world.
And
you can be lucky. Yeah, you can be lucky sometimes. Yeah.
I think they were seen as far south as France that night, or those few nights. Yeah.
Believe it too, yeah.
Because the French were like, I remember being at an astronomy festival in France and talking. I was saying, I'm getting messages that there's noctilucent clouds back home, and they were like, what? And they did, they did get to see them this time.
Yeah, it's something you kind of take for granted, I think, when you look at the night sky. So if you're used to seeing the northern lights, or if you're used to seeing noctilucent clouds, I think you just assume everybody can see these everywhere, and it's just not the case,
Yeah.
There's one interesting thing about that. So as you said, John, is that they have seasons in the northern hemisphere, summer, and obviously in the equivalent of the southern hemisphere in the summertime. And but this year in the southern hemisphere, there was hardly any season for noctilucent clouds for some reason.
Yeah. Some years it tends to be you don't really see much, and then other years it's spectacular. The first time I actually realized what they were was 2011, and we had, for some reason, an absolutely spectacular display over Dublin, and they just seemed to get better and better and crisper and brighter as the night went on. And I actually, for the first time, I thought, are these actually the northern lights I'm seeing? They don't really look like them, but I can't really explain what else they could be. And I remember I kind of, like, I have work in the morning, but no, I get in the camera, I get in the car, I'm driving out somewhere dark, and I think I spent 4 or 5 hours just photographing it as it changed. And I went back and I Googled it, what are these? And I finally found noctilucent clouds. Yeah, that's what they must be. But I had no idea what it was, but it was just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
I remember seeing those ones, John, but I don't remember seeing them much before that.
Exactly. I don't remember
Yeah.
noticing before that time.
But then I read that they're not a new phenomenon. We thought it might have been something to do with aerosols or something, but apparently they have been seen back, a couple of 100 years. So
yeah.
nothing sinister.
No. I think it's rare enough to get a spectacular display, from our location, but every so often you do, Like you say, they rarely do get above low on the horizon, but the odd time they do, and they really are an incredible sight,
Yeah, it went absolutely crazy here because, as you say, we was in lockdown. We're just, a couple of months into lockdown, and the people where I was, they were getting in contact with me from the local newspaper because people were wondering what these strange silver bluey clouds were that were just lingering over the northern horizon. And I had to explain to people what they were. And there's so many people learned so much about the night sky last year. I think it's a little bit different now because I don't know about, in Ireland or wherever, but in England, we had this new lockdown that we're just coming out of a couple of days ago, but we kind of were taking the foot off the gas anyway. We weren't taking it seriously. I don't know why. I think people just don't want to live in fear anymore. Certainly in this part of England anyway. We're starting to creep out and about and things like that. We shouldn't do really. So let's hope there's no police listening. But so many people noticed so many different things in the night sky last year, and of course they were blessed with a comet that was naked eye, which hadn't been seen since 1997. I think was the last naked eye comet, Hale-Bopp, as we mentioned earlier. So many people saw so many things, and of course we had a great conjunction at the end of last year. Did you get anything with that one, John?
I did actually. Yeah, I remember planning for that a long time ago. I said, "Oh yeah, I'll be all set up for that. I'll have the 6014 telescope ready." But just the positioning of it is very difficult to get at the time of day.
It was, yes.
So I didn't factor that in, but I did manage to visually just see it myself for maybe 20, 25 minutes. Just where I don't have my big C11 telescope. I've actually left that abroad. I left that in Barbados, so hopefully I can get back to it someday if COVID ever goes away. So I did have my C8 smaller C8 telescope, and I managed to set it up on such an angle on the street near the house that the one angle where I might actually see the planets, and I saw all the strange looks out the windows, wondering what that thing is, people looking at me like, what is that, it doesn't look like a traditional telescope to a lot of people. But yeah, I did manage to get it. It is incredible, and a few passers-by, that would you like to see the Great Conjunction? You kind of get this look of what? It's like, Jupiter and Saturn at the same time, and they're like, oh, okay,
that's it.
Great, fantastic,
Yeah.
But yeah,
and that was the first time.
Yeah,
I was going to say.
Saw that before, but
no.
I know what it is. It doesn't prepare you, even though you know what it is. When you actually look through the telescope and you're actually looking at it for real, and you see it there in front of you, it's still amazing. It's still as amazing as the first time you look through. Even if it is there's still sunlight and it's still not great quality, but just to actually see them, these two incredible gas giants out there in front of you in the same eyepiece, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. And that's the first time in a telescopic age it actually happened. The last time was before the invention of the telescope. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the time scale is involved, and the chances that you get, they only come once in a while.
They certainly do.
Once in a lifetime.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, John, I sent you a friend request on Facebook.
Oh, did you? Okay, I'll have to approve that.
I have to fire it up. Yes. I've got a picture of the moon or something astronomical.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll have to link up with you on Facebook and share some astronomy chat. Absolutely.
Do you do comets as well, John?
I haven't ever done it myself. I do know, friends in the astronomy community who do, do follow the comets, but I haven't ever followed one through a telescope. But it might actually be a good option.
I was going to say, for those people interested, the famous comet 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko is coming back to perihelion and will be magnitude 9 at the end of the year. So those people who remember the Rosetta mission and the Philae that landed on there, you get a chance to have a look at the comet with possibly a small telescope with large binoculars in the end of the year. So you can think of dear old Philae. Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah. I remember setting up and I remember Comet Ison with the great.
Oh yes, Comet Ison.
I remember that was
Yes, it was, wasn't it?
Essentially, and unfortunately, it was a fizzle, So yeah, you never know. That's the thing, but they are incredible, and they are a whole other sort of division of astronomy, you could say. They really are something special, And when you see those images through the telescope that are tracked, they really are an incredible view. Yeah.
Yes.
Can I mention that book that I was talking about?
Oh wow, yeah,
Of
and
course.
wonderful book.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a really gorgeous little book. It's called A History of the Universe in 100 Stars by Florian Freistetter. I think he's Austrian. And it's just out. And it's under €20, or in England it's $16.99 in pounds. Yeah. And it's really nice. This guy at night said it was delightful, and I really think it is. He just chose 100 different stars with nothing in common, but he used them to sort of illustrate everything that's happened in the universe, and who found what, and how the stars have got their catalogues and their brightness, and it's just really good. Yeah, I really love it. And each chapter is only like a couple of pages, so you can dip in and out anywhere you like. It's really good. And so he told like the myths and from different countries and different civilizations, and people that you mightn't have heard of before, like Dorit Hoffleit, who first counted the stars. They're all women, as it turns out here, but Henrietta Swan Leavitt, who told us how big the universe is. Celia Payne, who discovered what stars are made of, and he tells how they did it. And then a George von Kurbach, who paved the way for this, the heliocentric view of the world. Before that, we all thought, that everything revolved around us. And a James Bradley, who proved it for once and for all that the Earth does go around the sun. And then he also goes into the more famous people like Isaac Newton and Einstein and all that. But really good, really, really interesting. And it's the kind of book I would have loved to have now when I was like, maybe 12, 13, just any age group now.
It'd be great for kids and as well as adults, and maybe for adults to read to their children.
I love the little story about the cowherd and the heavenly weaver girl. So in Japan, Altair, the star Altair, is known as, I need Nick for the pronunciation here, but it's Hikoboshi. And every year on the 7th of July, they actually hold a celebration in Japan in honor of him, Hikoboshi, and Orihime. And it's a really old legend. It's at least 2,600 years old. So Orihime was the sky god's daughter. The sky god was called Tentei, and she wove garments for the gods. And Tentei arranged an engagement between her and the cowherd Hikoboshi. So the two of them anyway were mad about each other. They couldn't get enough of each other, and they neglected their duties. So the cows were running wild and the gods weren't getting their robes. So Tentei sent them into exile on either side of this heavenly river called Amanagawa. But they were pining for each other. They still weren't getting their work done. So they were allowed to meet once a year on the 7th of July. But when they got to the river, there was no bridge to get across. So these magpies took pity on them and made a bridge of themselves across this river. So you might have guessed what it all is. The cowherd is Altair, the weaver is Vega, and the heavenly river is the Milky Way, which stretches between them. And if you look in the region of the Milky Way between those two stars, at that date, the 7th, it's the 7th day of the 7th month. It's partially filled with a sort of large interstellar dust clouds, which is the Magpie Bridge. And you can see them both high in the sky in summer, particularly clearly just at that date. So there's romancing stars. And I really loved that little story, just, because we know our own ones and the Greek ones, but it's nice to hear other cultures. And so the book is called A History of the Universe in 100 Stars by Florian Freistetter, and it's just out, and it's a super little book. I just kept up late every night reading it the last few nights.
Fabulous. I'm definitely going to have a look into that now myself.
Really good to give for a present to anyone that has any kind of interest,
Yes.
So that's my
thought. I just
sorry.
I was just going to mention out Yuri Gagarin, the cosmonaut that went up 60 years ago on the 14th of April, which was the 12th of April, which was Monday gone. It's 60 years now, and he did his low Earth orbit with the 108 minutes. The man had to jump out of the capsule and parachute back in to Earth once they got through the atmosphere. I mean, fair play to him. He was 27 years of age. He had no he had no astronomy or anything knowledge. He was just a pilot.
Yep.
60 years ago, only for him, would we have gone any further? And he was a very brave man. He did a great job in his time. And unfortunately, he did die 7 years later when he was only 33 in an airplane crash. But in Mig, just north of Moscow. But I don't think much would have went on apart from him being the brave man that went up there to start with, for the 108 famous minutes in the low Earth orbit that we now take for granted.
Yeah, we do.
Well, it put a rocket literally under the Americans to try and get up there.
Yes.
If the Russians were doing it, they had to do better.
They had to do better, yes.
It was an amazing feat. It really was. I was alive at the time, and I can remember it was so exciting and amazing at the time,
Spacecraft called Vostok. It was very, very basic, but
it was lucky
I know it's not set up there because it came back down to Earth. But is it anywhere to be seen now, or is it just gone? I know they did recover it, but I wonder if it's on the museum or anything anywhere, or what's left of it.
I should have thought most of it would have burnt up, wouldn't it? Unless some
they did.
crash.
They did find some of it. I say I don't know how much, but they did recover some. But I just wonder if there's even parts of it left. I mean, 60 years is fascinating to think from then to what we've.
They weren't saying much back then. We had the Iron Curtain.
Yes.
And there was very little coming out of Russia and very little cooperation. I mean, it was Cold War.
Yeah.
So we weren't getting much information. And I think was it monitored by the observatory in England. What's his name?
The one in Manchester.
Yeah.
Jodrell Bank.
Jodrell Bank. I think he was dying to get back up and do more of that, but they had him as a sort of poster child, and he went around the world. I don't think that's what he wanted to do, really.
He wanted to be a fighter pilot.
Yeah. It's kind of farmed out. He did a global tour, and he had a lovely smile.
That's it, yeah.
So with the results that the Russians just kind of, I'm not going to say abused him, but they used him and just sent him out. He wanted to fly, and I don't think he ended up doing too well after that, God love him. But I still think, wow, what an amazing man. And I'm glad he's remembered, and I'm glad he has his little statue.
Yes.
Fantastic achievement, and like the first one in the world to leave the Earth and get up there. It was amazing.
And Maggie Adel Pocock's birthday. She was the lady that was actually speaking about him on Star Watch the other night, or what's it called?
Sky Night.
Star Watch. Hear me. She shared a birthday with him, and he actually died a few days, I think, after she was born. So I mean, she's quite fascinated with him. I only seen them myself this evening. So she was fascinating him for a long time.
Yeah.
But he does have a statue, and I think up until honestly the last week or so, I didn't know much about him, and I'm glad he's remembered.
Well, it was a very exciting time. It was also a scary time because we didn't know, it wasn't long after the Second World War, and we were all a bit afraid of nuclear war and what the Russians were doing, and it was an amazing achievement, but it was also a little bit scary. Like, what are they up to? Then John F. Kennedy decided we have to, get there, not because it is easy, because it's hard. Isn't that it? What he said?
Not because it's easy, it's because it's hard. It was his famous speech, but I think it was more that he just wanted to beat the Russians. Yeah. When you look back, I mean, there was a huge amount of competition there. I'd just like to mention that he did die in flight as a test flight with another man in 1968. He did die back in flight because he asked to go back. He was from quite a rural area as well in Russia. He didn't like all the lights and all the fame and all the attention, which must have been difficult for him. He had a family, quite a young family as well at the time, It
was all about propaganda at the time, wasn't it?
Yes. He had a nice smile, I think, was a huge part of it. He had a nice smile, so they decided, well, people like him, let's just send him out.
Yeah.
Poor man. He'll never be forgotten.
I mean, I think he's pretty much remembered now as a very brave man.
Especially the bit about jumping out of the capsule. Gosh.
Yeah, he had to parachute from it. It did come back into the atmosphere. He had to parachute from the actual capsule.
Oh my God.
I could not even begin to imagine. And he did,
I bet they're all keeping their fingers crossed, weren't they? Because they just didn't know what they were doing, I'm sure.
And 108 minutes mightn't sound like long to us now. I'm sure that was 108 8 minutes of absolute pure fear for him and whoever was on the ground to see if he'd come back.
Sure.
You know?
And they took more risks then, like the health and safety kind of attitude hadn't come in yet.
No.
He didn't have any.
Yeah, really incredible. He started the whole thing, you know.
Yeah.
And as you say, it was a different era in terms of health and safety, and we'll just do whatever it takes, you know. And both sides really did have that mentality. And I think there is a certain kind of personality of people, you know, test pilot kind of mentality of just go into it and just deal with it and just get on with it kind of thing. And yeah, very interesting. And I think there is a bit of a similarity, like you were saying, he didn't like the limelight so much. I think that's kind of similar to Neil Armstrong. I don't think he was too keen on all the interviews he had to give and all of the limelight he had to go into afterwards. You know, he'd much rather just go back to work, you know, on engineering and piloting. He wasn't so much into, you know, all the glitz and glam. So
he wanted to do his job. He didn't want to be going around to interviews and be
and he did,
be a
for the
celebrity.
most part, he did just get back to it, you know, and he didn't do interviews all that often after the fact, you know. In the years following it, you know, for the first 2 years after the missions, he gave a few sort of interviews, but then he kind of went quiet and you didn't hear from him that often, you know.
Yeah.
I'd say that's quite a common thing with all of those guys who were involved in that era, you know.
Yeah. They liked their anonymity and left alone.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's it, yeah.
They just said, who had heard of NASA at that point, or any of the does anybody want my job, is what James Webb said. I mean, nobody had heard about it, then all of a sudden people were paying attention. I presume propaganda and good advertising in a way. They got the public interested, and they'd get more funding, and I suppose more people.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the main reasons why Neil Armstrong was chosen to walk on the moon first rather than Buzz Aldrin, because I think they thought he was the wrong personality to be their poster boy, shall we say, that when they came back, they wanted somebody a little bit less out there. They wanted somebody, you know, because obviously if Buzz Aldrin had landed there first, holy moly.
I think Neil Armstrong was a little bit more reserved, you know, kind of view. I did remember reading up on the Apollo missions, and apparently Buzz Aldrin was, you know, not a popular person even among the astronauts themselves. He was quite outspoken and could be quite, you know. But,
bit loose cannon.
But he did have an incredible talent. Apparently, he was one of the only guys who could figure out how to use tools on an EVA. I think they'd checked that a couple of times, and the guys couldn't when they were outside in the spacesuit trying to use tools outside. They just couldn't do it, and they couldn't figure out how to get traction and how to turn a wrench, you know. And it was extremely difficult, and they got nervous and they weren't able to do it. And whatever he did, he figured out how to do that. And they said he was the only guy, and he taught the rest of them how to do it. But they said as much as he was difficult to work with, he was incredibly smart and incredibly able, you know. But as you say, as the choice to walk on the moon, you pick the guy who's probably a bit more reserved and a bit more of a, you know, a pleasant sort of camera friendly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He was a bit more acceptable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, didn't Buzz Aldrin punch somebody who said that the moon, the whole moon landing was a fake?
Oh,
that's true. Yeah.
I don't think Neil Armstrong would have done that.
No. In fact, it's that same guy we were talking about, the guy who thinks it's all fake, and he used to try and ambush the guys and with a camera crew and try and get them to admit they didn't land and all this kind of stuff. And there was actually he did the same thing to both Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong. You know, and only one of them punched him in the face. So, you know.
And he was getting on it as well.
Yeah, it's not that long ago.
No, it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, because that guy wanted to swear on the Bible that they'd landed on the moon or something. They had to hold the Bible.
Yeah, he just arrived in.
Yeah.
I could just say, if you're willing to lie completely about the space, the moon landing, you probably wouldn't have a problem lying on the Bible. I mean, if that's how deep things are going to go, and you're absolutely willing to make up a whole hoax, you probably wouldn't have a problem with the Bible, you know.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. I know dear Nick's not with us, but I'm sure he's there somewhere in spirit. But it's been a great show.
Really interesting. Lovely to have you, John.
It's been fantastic. Yeah, thank you.
Right, well, everybody, I think we should say good night.
Great to speak to you again, John. It's been 5 years.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's great to talk to you.
Really enjoy it.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed it too. We're missing you, Nick, but we managed.
We just about. But we'll hopefully see him. We'll see Nick again next month.
Yeah, he'll be back. Keep the budgies away from him.
Good night, John. Good night, Anne. Good night, Neil.
Good night,
and I'm
John.
delighted to have a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Bye.